Hello everybody, welcome to the Powered Living Product Talk for today. And the topic that we're going to discuss isn't actually a product today, but we're going to talk about a question, and that kind of comes out of stuff that I've been seeing around the internet for the past little while. And the question is, should my oils be organic? Now, if you've been reading some of the posts that are out there with other companies trying to promote their oils, they're going to say you should never buy an oil unless it's certified organic. And so what I want to do is to talk to you today and talk about, does that actually make sense? Does it make sense that we should have oils that are organic? Now, I think all of us have come to kind of trust the organic label for good reason, because when we're looking at conventionally grown produce, which kind of ironically, conventionally grown produce is really, many years ago it was only organic. So we're talking about current conventionally grown produce, which means produce that's grown with pesticides and herbicides and various chemicals to help with fertilizers and so on. And we know that those things that they're using in the production of those plants and so on is not particularly helpful for us. And so that's why many of us have turned to using organic produce, right? And so for good reason. We know that it's safer. We know that it's a more sustainable way of growing produce. We know that it results in land that's not kind of being, kind of raped, so to speak, of its nutrients, but over time will actually be long-term more sustainable than conventionally grown produce. So the question when it comes to essential oils are, well, why aren't doTERRA essential oils certified organic? And should we even be caring about certified organic when it comes to essential oils? So that's what I want to talk about today. So let's just talk for a minute about organic standards in the United States. Let's stick with the United States because that's kind of where most people are getting their organic produce from, at least here in North America, and that's kind of the standard that we're looking to when we're kind of comparing, things that are organic. So first of all, for United States, a couple of things that you need to be aware of is, of course, when we're seeing any kind of stamp being given, we need to recognize that it's the government of the country where the produce is growing that's giving the stamp. So they get to control what they say is organic and what they say is not organic, right? And for the United States, the USDA certified organic label, for example, there's still 40 substances that can be used that are herbicides and pesticides that they consider to be allowable in the process of growing something organically. So just because it's organic doesn't mean it doesn't have any herbicides or pesticides or synthetic fertilizers. It just means that for the majority of them, they're not allowed. And even if you look on the USDA website where it talks about organic and what organic means, it will say it eliminates most pesticides and herbicides and chemical fertilizers, but it doesn't mean all of them. There's still 40 that are allowed to be used. So that's the first thing that you need to know. And when we're talking about like an organically stamped product, for example, you buy organic mac and cheese or whatever, up to 5% of the ingredients can actually still be non-organic and it can be labeled organic. So we know that when it comes to food, we're not talking about food that is free from every possible harmful substance. It's just free from most of them. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. But the other thing to keep in mind is that we have to look to where are essential oils grown, right? So we know that we have some essential oils from doTERRA that are grown in the United States. So for example, we get our peppermint oil from Washington. And when we're getting our peppermint oil from Washington, we can be getting organic peppermint oil and be getting a USDA label for that. But what happens when we're getting an oil from Haiti? Or what happens when we're getting an oil from, Saudi Arabia or Oman? What happens in those cases? Well, we're now subject to that country's standard of organic. And you need to know that for some of these countries where we're sourcing the oil, we're talking about developing nations. We're talking about third world countries. And we know that in some countries that the government is more reliable than in other countries. And for some of these countries, what organic looks like is this. A farmer will want to certify their produce as organic, and so the government will then say, okay, pay me this amount of money and you will get a stamp that says that the product is organic. So they pay the money, the government gives them the stamp, no one ever goes out to the farm to check whether the standards are actually met, because the government isn't all that concerned in that case about the produce actually being organic. What they're concerned about is making the money, and that's how they get their money. And alternatively, there are farmers in the United States, for example, who are very, very ethical and who, spend a lot of time and energy raising only the best kind of produce, free from every possible harmful substance, and yet they don't have a label. And the reason for that is they simply can't afford it. So we have to recognize that there's a lot of bureaucracy involved with the whole organic labeling, right? So in the United States, it could be more reliable if they have the label, but again, smaller farmers wouldn't afford it. And in countries that are third world countries, well, the standard may mean nothing at all. It may just mean that one farmer paid to get this stamp versus another farmer that didn't pay to get the stamp. And so what does organic mean in those situations? It doesn't really mean a whole lot. I think it's somewhere in the area of 80% of our oils are actually from developing nations. And if that's the case, what is the sense of trying to go after an organic standard when it could be actually irrelevant in that developing nation? And so when you're hearing people really push on this whole topic of should an oil be organic, push back to them and ask, what does organic mean in the context of an oil that's grown in a third world country? Or what does it even mean in the United States when up to 40 chemicals could potentially be used and still be labeled organic? So those are some things to consider. The other thing to consider is that it's kind of irrelevant in a way whether an oil is organic if it's going through the appropriate testing. And so this is why in my journey with essential oils, I was led very clearly to doTERRA, because my background as a CPA led me to understand what valid testing is, what's reliable testing. And when we're talking about essential oils, you probably know, if you don't, you will know now, that there is nobody looking at the quality of what's inside of a bottle. So let's just say that for the sake of argument, I managed to create an avocado farm in my backyard and I got it certified organic. So I have completely organic avocados growing in my backyard because I don't use any herbicides or pesticides or so on. Would you want to buy my avocados? Not likely, right? Because I don't have the kind of soil, I don't have the kind of climate to grow an avocado. I don't even think it would ripen in my backyard because of the climate where I'm living. So where an oil is grown, or where the product is grown, where the plant is grown, is going to be sometimes more important than whether it's organic or not, right? So we don't want just something that's organic. We want something that's therapeutically relevant. And in order for it to be therapeutically relevant, it has to be grown in its natural habitat. It has to be grown in a place where there's going to be producing a really good quality oil. And so what doTERRA does in the sourcing of their oils is they go throughout the world looking and finding where is it best to grow lemons. And even though lemons are more plentiful in Florida, and it would be easy for doTERRA to source their lemons from Florida because they're an American company, we actually source our lemons from Italy because they're more therapeutically relevant when they come from Italy. Even though you can grow lavender in a greenhouse in the United States and produce lavender oil that way, or there's lavender farms here in Ontario, we know that the best therapeutically relevant lavender oil comes from France and now Bulgaria. And so where a plant is grown is going to be equally as important and potentially more important. When we're looking at the oil, how we're going to know that it's pure, because there's nobody testing the oil, how we're going to know that it's pure is based on the results of the testing itself. So even if an oil is organic, you still have to test it. And who is doing the testing of these oils that are certified organic, right? There's lots of oils that are on the health food store shelf that are certified organic, oregano oil, for example. And then you look on the side of the bottle and it's actually only 14% oregano oil and 86% olive oil. So maybe it's organic olive oil, but you're just paying for really expensive olive oil at that point. You're not really paying for oregano oil. And so who's testing the oil that is in the bottle of organic oil? That's the more important question. And what kinds of tests are they doing? doTERRA asked this question of top 8 companies in the world other than themselves, because of course they are the largest essential oil producer in the world, and they're more than 3 times bigger than their nearest competitor, so they've they've got some size going for them in terms of people are obviously recognizing the quality of their oils. But they asked the top 8 competitors, so to speak, what were they doing in terms of testing? And out of those top 8 that were asked, only 3 of them were doing any kind of testing at all. 5 of them made no claim to test for anything. What they were doing is relying upon the third party where they were getting their oils from, because they didn't have connection directly with the growers. They were relying on getting the oils from kind of a middleman. And if the middleman did testing and said that they did testing, they relied upon that. So the company itself was doing no testing of the oil. So that's kind of concerning. The second thing is that out of the 3 companies that said that they did do tests, what they did were the standard 5 indicator tests. Now, the indicator tests are as follows. Some of them are hard to pronounce. Organoleptic testing, specific gravity testing, optical rotation, refractive index, GCMS, which is gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, and FTIR. So all of those 5 tests were being done by the 3 companies that said that they did do testing. But the problem is that those are what we call indicator tests. They actually just tell you that the oil is okay. It doesn't really tell you anything further about the oil. And we know that perfumers are getting incredibly creative in terms of creating synthetic versions of oils. And so what's happening is that sometimes we actually have to do carbon dating on certain oils to see if it's real. And that's, for example, I think the case with vetiver oil. We have to do carbon dating testing on it to see if it's actually a non-synthetic oil. That's how creative some of these essential oil manufacturers are becoming. And so doing those 5 indicator tests will not do anything to be able to detect the synthetic vetiver oil, for example. We have to do many tests beyond that. And only 1 company out of the all 8 did any kind of testing beyond the 5. And out of that 1 company just did 1 little test in addition to the 5. But doTERRA does 11 qualitative tests in addition to the 5 indicator tests. And those are stability testing, heavy metal testing, TPC or microbial testing, pesticide analysis, chiral GC, isotope carbon-14 like we talked about, biochemical pairing, taxonomy, volatile carbon analysis, thin layer chromatography, and LCMS. And I can't tell you I know what that stands for, but I do know that they go way beyond any company in the entire world in terms of the kinds of testing that they do. So when you're looking at the quality of an oil, remember, organic doesn't mean anything. It can mean that it's maybe free of most chemicals, but it doesn't tell you anything about whether it's actually therapeutically relevant. It doesn't tell you even that it is free of everything, right? There could still be things that are used. Hey there, I think my signal got interrupted. Hopefully the recording, even if you couldn't see it live, the recording will actually have everything, because it should have recorded me up until this point. So my apologies if you've missed it. So anyway, I think you're getting the point that organic isn't sufficient, that organic will tell you, you know, in some countries that there's nothing harmful, but in some countries organic doesn't even tell you that there's nothing harmful, because if it's a third world country, then what you're relying on is the integrity of the government, and in some cases there's nobody that does testing. And just so you know, even in the United States, for the USDA label of organic, they don't actually do the visits themselves to see if the farmers are meeting the conditions. They're done by 3 other organizations, and 2 of those organizations are profit corporations, so you know, potentially some misguided or misaligned objectives in there. And you know, even within those 3 corporations, there's a lot of other people that will become involved in that testing process, because the corporations will offload the work to other people. So you know, we're kind of relying upon a whole string of things in order to be able to meet that qualification of organic. But besides that point, as we talked about, that's not sufficient. Okay, so it doesn't mean organic is bad. I'd still much rather have organic produce than non-organic produce for the most part. But when it comes to an essential oil and relying on the quality and making sure that there's nothing harmful in it, organic is not going to be sufficient, and it's also not going to be a guarantee that there's nothing harmful in the oil. So the testing is where it's at, and there's no company in the world that's doing the kind of testing that doTERRA is doing. So hopefully that was helpful to you, to help to understand. There's a lot of buzz going around the internet right now, and you can feel a little bit calmer now because you hopefully will have an answer to those people who are demanding that we have organic oils. And so there you go, there's your answer. So I mentioned to some of you that I had 4 Holiday Joy oils to give away. So I would like to give this to somebody who would like Holiday Joy oil, because everybody needs some joy in their lives, right? So I can read your comments, and I'm waiting to see who would like Holiday Joy. Okay, so Sarah Chapman, you get a Holiday Joy oil. Yay! You know the procedure, so you write to empoweredeoliving@gmail.com and let Leah know that you got a 15 ml bottle of Holiday Joy oil. Okay, who else? Olwyn Jones. Olwyn, you get a bottle of Holiday Joy oil. So make sure you write empoweredeoliving@gmail.com. Let her know you won one. Katie Wall. Well, you're winning all kinds of stuff now. So Katie, you got a bottle of Holiday Joy oil. So Michelle McRowan, McRowan, I know that's not your last name. Michelle Rowan, you get the last bottle of Holiday Joy. So so thank you everybody for joining me, and I'm glad that I was able to give away some joy and hopefully give away some really helpful information too. So we'll talk to you soon.